The U.S. is supposedly moving forward with sweeping 25% tariffs on Canadian goods. It's set to take effect this Tuesday, March the 4th. For a city like Brampton, which has very strong ties to the U.S., this could have serious economic consequences. In response, Mayor Patrick Brown has proposed a mayor's tariff task force to help businesses navigate these challenges, diversify trade, and reduce their reliance on American markets. Joining me now to discuss what this means for Brampton and its businesses is Rowena Santos, Regional Councillor for Wards 1 and 5. Hi, Rowena. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good morning.
Great. Thanks so much for joining me. So how big of a threat are these tariffs to Brampton's economy, and what's the city's game plan to counter them?
You know, it's so funny you're describing what the situation is outside with the weather, but this whole idea of the Trump tax and tariffs hitting Brampton is kind of like a roller coaster ride, and you're not wearing your seatbelt, you're holding a cat, and the kid in front of you that ate too much cotton candy, you don't know what's going to hit you next. But all joking aside, every single order of government has a role to play on Team Canada. And for Brampton, many of our businesses are inextricably linked to businesses in the United States. So regardless of what side of the border, when a plant shuts down or slows down in Brampton, we're going to feel it the most at the local level. And so the city of Brampton, through the task force on tariffs that's being created, is really taking a city to city approach, reaching out and having meetings and speaking with the different municipalities that are linked to Brampton through our supply chain, and talking about a level of understanding of what the impact is going to be on both sides of the border, in addition to a few other things that the city of Brampton is leading.
And when you say city-to-city approach, are you reaching out to American cities or other Canadian cities? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so it's kind of both. So as a board member of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which represents over 2,100 municipalities around the country, I'm also encouraging board members to do the same across Canada, is to look at their own supply chains, reaching out to businesses, not just businesses in the U.S., that are linked to their supply chain, but also other mayors and councillors in the United States. Because regardless of what Doug Trump says or doesn't say, or changes his mind on any given day, depending on where we are on the roller coaster, the local councillors, the local officials understand what it will mean to their cities and towns. I could give you an example. For example, Lynchburg, Tennessee, a population of 7,000 people. They heavily rely on the Jack Daniel's distillery that's been there for centuries. They produce every single drop of whiskey, Jack Daniel's whiskey, at that facility. If Doug Ford follows through by pulling American booze off the shelves, the small town of Lynchburg is going to feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes sense, as they should. I mean, their Jack Daniel's is wonderful. I've had some. There's nothing wrong with their product. But, you know, I do agree with that. There has to be some kind of retaliatory measure if, you know, the U.S. is going to do something like, is going to, you know, foist upon us the 25% tariffs. So, you know, it's interesting that your take, well, I guess Brampton's take on doing this. Are other cities forming task force like yours?
We hope so. We have upcoming board meetings in the next couple of weeks at FCM, speaking to thousands of municipalities around the country. And that board meeting is happening in Montreal, where I will be, as chair of one of their finance committees, sharing some of these various ideas. And I'm hoping that's the hope for them to take this on. Like, another big thing to consider is Brampton is one of the fastest growing and largest municipalities in the country, has purchasing power of $1.4 billion of goods and services. And if you add that all up, I know FCM is coming out with research about what the total spending is for municipalities around the country. When you add that up and say, hey, we're no longer going to procure products in America, we're going to go across provinces, you know, interprovincial trade, or even expand and look at other markets outside of the USA. You know, the United States, those various businesses who end up supplying municipalities with various goods and services, they will also feel it too. So these are things that I'll be bringing up at FCM as part of Brampton taking a big lead on some of these ideas.
And sorry, can you explain to us what is FCM? I keep trying. I don't want to interrupt you, and I'm like, what is that?
No, so FCM is the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, where I'm one of the board of directors, and we represent over 2,100 municipalities around the country. So different mayors and councillors from small towns to large urban centers like Toronto, Brampton, Hamilton, Montreal, and Calgary. We represent all those municipalities in advocacy, but also recommending policy.
Right. And so, what are some of the biggest obstacles that are currently preventing Brampton businesses from expanding within Canada, and how can local governments help fix that?
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought that up, because that's part of what we announced last week about what Brampton is doing. So one of the things that would be fantastic for the federal government to help support in Brampton, but also businesses across Canada, is logistics. So we have been heavily dependent on the United States market because it's geographically the closest place. Now, if we want our businesses to expand in other markets, such as in Europe or South America, or in Asia, for example, then we need help from the federal government to cover some of those initial logistic costs, whether that's shipping, or things related to shipping within logistics. Those are things that I think the federal government can step in to help with. So from Brampton's perspective, we're hoping that the federal government will provide some sort of financial package to allow for businesses to expedite the logistics related to outreach in other markets.
And so what specifically are you doing with the businesses that are based in Brampton in terms of what specific advice are you giving, or how are you helping them during this time?
Yeah, so we're providing them through our Economic Development Office with different tools and the latest information regarding any federal grant programs or initiatives that will come into play. And, even before this idea of U.S. tariffs happened, the city of Brampton, through our Economic Development Office, the mayor and council, we've already been doing preliminary outreach in markets outside of the United States. So for many years, we've been kind of maintaining, but also developing and strengthening relationships in Germany, in Japan, in Portugal, in Ireland, so many different relationships. We've already preemptively opened doors for our businesses. And so we're going to continue to do that while also reaching out to our U.S. Business counterparts and councillors and mayors to better understand and protect local economies on both sides of the border.
That sounds great. I mean, I think it's great that the city of Brampton is taking on such a proactive stance in the face of the threats coming. And of course, we don't know whether they're coming or whether there's just a threat of them coming and they may never come. But I still think it's great foresight for you guys to take this on and have such a proactive approach to the tariffs. So congrats to the city of Brampton, yourself and Mayor Patrick Brown for doing that.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Bye-bye.
Bye. That was Rowena Santos. She's a regional councillor for wards 1 and 5 in Brampton, about all the proactive things that Brampton is doing in the face of impending threats coming up, perhaps on Tuesday, perhaps coming up in April, or not coming up at all, and perhaps it's a threat and we just don't know. It's currently 8:15. You're listening live to Deval Morrison on 640 Toronto.